Hi guys! In 2018, UN Secretary General António Guterres told the Security Council that the Cold War had returned. And Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov said that Moscow's relations with the West are even worse than at the time. The conflict between Russia and the United States have been growing for several years in a row. But it was not always like that. In the history of two countries, there have been warm and even brotherly periods. Today we'll tell you these moments. And for now, subscribe to my channel and don't forget to like this video. During the War of the North American colonies for independence from the British Empire, Russia in fact supported the rebels, declaring armed neutrality in 1779. The British wanted to blockade the ports of France and Spain, inspect the ships of the neutral power, and even confiscate their goods. But a joint declaration by Russia, Sweden, Denmark, and other countries ruined London's plans. The Russian fleet, including with its weapons, helped the young American Republic to receive food and other necessary goods. During the Civil War, Russia again came to the aid of the Americans. Emperor Alexander II in 1863 sent two Russian squadrons to New York and San Francisco. They kept the Southern Fleet from attacking these ports and at the same time prevented England and France from entering into a conflict on the side of Confederates. Ministers and congressmen have been on Russian ships in New York. One of the ships, the young Rimsky-Korsakov, a world-famous composer in the future, arrived in New York. Here are some headlines in American newspapers of that period. The new alliance is sealed. Russia and the United States are brotherhood. The Russian cross waves its folds with stars and stripes. Enthusiastic people's demonstration. The big parade on the Fifth Avenue. Shortly after the end of the American Civil War, Russia sold Alaska to the Americans for $7,200,000 in gold. The United States was the first to recognize a provisional government in Russia in 1917. The recognition of provisional government was personally announced by the ambassador in Petrograd, David Francis. The US government perceived the new Russia without a Tsar as a great brotherly democratic power, offering loans and support. American journalists were generally positive about the overthrow of the Tsar in Russia, but the friendship of the democratic brothers was short-lived. After the Bolsheviks came to power, relations deteriorated sharply. The United States supported the White Army and even sent troops to the Far East and Pomoria. The onset of Great Depression prompted to the US to restore relations with the Soviets. In 1933, Washington finally recognized the USSR officially, and after that the countries began to actively make friends, at least in terms of the economy. Moscow needed technology and investment, and American companies needed a market. Stalin's industrialization was helped in particular by Ford Austin Company. They built a gas plant in Nizhny Novgorod. Albert Ken in C built the Chelyabinsk and Stalingrad tractor plants, and Great Electric, who helped in the construction of power plants and the first electric locomotives. After the German attack on the USSR and Japan on the USA in 1941, the countries, together with Britain and other states, became allies. However, Lend-Lease support began in the autumn of 1941. In 1942, an agreement on mutual assistance was signed. Propaganda in both countries told the soldiers and the population that the countries were fight for freedom. In the USSR, propaganda posters were drawn in the USA. For example, in 1933, a semi-documentary film Mission to Moscow was released, which was forbidden to show in all cinemas of the country. It justifies Stalin's repression of 1937-1938. 10 years later, during the rampage of Macronism, it was banned as pro-communist propaganda. The culmination was a meeting on the Elba in April 1935. Already in the summer of 1935, relations began to deteriorate rapidly, especially after the nuclear bombing of Japan. In 1985, Mikhail Gorbachev came to power in the USSR. Along with reorganization and publicity, they announced a new mindset that involved a different outlook on international relations and rejection of the class approach. After the fall of the Berlin Wall in 1989, the Warsaw Pact collapsed and the former Soviet satellites one by one declared democratization and a desire to join a united Europe. In the USSR itself, against the backdrop of economic and other difficulties, empty stalls, queues, mass protests, ethnic conflicts, the Western model, primarily the American, is unequivocally perceived as a role model. After the collapse of the Soviet Union, warm relations continued for several more years. In 1992, President Yeltsin addressed the US Congress with a speech about the need to move from confrontation to interaction. In 1992-1994, the United States carried out Operation Provide Hope. 25 tons of humanitarian supplies were delivered to 33 cities of the former USSR. In 1994, Russia joined the Partnership for Peace, a program for cooperation between the countries of the former USSR and NATO. In 1997, the Russian NATO Founding Act was signed, which states that Russia and NATO are not rivals. But everything changed democratically in March 1999 with the start of the bombing of Yugoslavia by NATO aircraft, which for the first time in a long time caused a surge of anti-American sentiments both at the government and the Philistine levels. After the September 11 attacks, Vladimir Putin was one of the first to call George Bush with words of condolence and support. Russia joined the anti-terrorist coalition, which was created by the United States in 2001. Moscow actively supported the operation in Afghanistan, including providing its own airspace. For some time, it seems that this warming would be for a long time. But in 2002, a joint declaration by Bush and Putin appeared, which emphasized that the countries were now partners. It deals with respect for democratic values, expansion of ties between countries, joint resolution of conflicts in Afghanistan, Abkhazia, Nagorno-Karabakh, as well as economic cooperation and Russian entry into the WTO. But everything deteriorated again in the same 2002 when the United States withdrew from the ABM treaty and Russia from START II. And with the start of the American operation in Iraq in 2003, relations became more complicated. In March 2009, Sergei Lavrov and Hillary Clinton pressed the symbolic reset button in relations between the two countries. We tried very hard to write this word in Russian correctly. We made it? Clinton asked them. But there was a mistake. It turned out that the button was written перегрузка instead of перезагрузка. Dmitry Medvedev, the first president of Russia, made the steps towards the Americans during his visit to United States. He ate burgers with Barack Obama and received an iPhone as a gift from Steve Jobs. And during the crisis in Libya, he did not interfere and veto the UN. But the matter did not go further than symbolic steps. In 2012, Vladimir Putin became president again, who was convinced that the mass protests for fair elections were organized or at least supported by the US State Department. This obviously ruined the relationship, and the typo about overload became prophetic. So guys, if you like this video, like it, subscribe to my channel. See you soon, bye bye.